Hello, my name is Squire. Welcome to the highlights of the Formula Waga 2018 Championship. After 6 months out, WRL is rumbling into action once again, with the news that WRL will be using the racing simulator Automobilista for the 2018 season. With that out of the way, the season kicks off with the Australian Grand Prix, the great place for the race. 29 laps around the Albert Park Lake. This has seen various moments throughout its 2 decades on the F1 calendar. From Villeneuve's fantastic debut to the first corner pileup of 2002, Melbourne always provides something for the fans. The qualifying rules is that each driver is allowed 12 laps each and needing to qualify within 105% of the pole time in order to make it to the grid. The same rules apply in Q2, but the driver's car has been bound by parc fermé, which means no changes other than the fuel load or the front wings. And it's Philip Kraus who takes pole position for Vulcan Racing ahead of drillers Jan Waga in second. Defending champion Max Shepard lines up in third, ahead of the Croatian debutant Robert Jukic in fourth for the new Spanish team American Racing. VRT finally arrives in WRL with Liam Kingsley getting 5th, ahead of the former Nova boss Ruben van den Hudden in 6th in the second drillers. Kian White lines up in 7th for Cruz, ahead of Matthew Clip, who returns to sim racing after a long sabbatical to drive for Eidos Motorsport in 8th, and the new Force Racing team of rookies Sergio Quattrocchi and Massimiliano Ribelli rounds up the top 10 for the Italians. Other notable debuts and returnees include Indonesia's Michael Vincent for Iris, Ariane Guzzo for Kingfisher, George Day for the new team Reality Checks, George Roach comes in for a league reserve in 16th, and Sid Kumar returns after a year-long absence to drive for the new NRWO outfit in 22nd place. Only 3 failed to make the cut. Lawrence Doherty of VD Sport had technical issues on the warm-up and forced to retire. Richard C failed to qualify within 105% of the pole time, and Alfie Lawrenson failed to make it altogether, citing wheel issues before the race. To the race start, Liam Kingsley has a clean getaway and tries to avoid Shepard trying to come on the inside of him. Philip Kraus had a terrible start and Waga took advantage going into the first corner while everyone else made it through without major incident. Liam Kingsley's lightning start gets him up into second and on the prowl for the top spot already. Driving over the limit, particularly in the first race, could be very dangerous. Quattrocchi is a prime example, and the Italian only lost a few places after going back on track. Further up, Ariane Guzzo tries to have a go at Matthew Clip for 8th place going into turn 9, but he touches the Eidos car and loses momentum. Vincent says thank you for 9th place. Further back in the same area, Toby Byrne was a little bit too cautious coming out of turn 9 and he collected George Roach, who in turn collected Jacob Reed. Around the same time, Ariane Guzzo's race just goes from bad to worse, as at turn 12 he hits the apex too hard, goes wide and hits the barrier. Luckily, with minimum damage, he is able to continue. Then in the same instant, Richard Taylor goes wide at turn 11 and after a little off-roading cuts turn 12 and spins. At the end of lap 1, Waga still leads from Kingsley, Kraus, Shepard, Jukic, White and van den Hudden. The Croatian rookie Robert Jukic is certainly causing a stir on his debut as he challenges the world champion Shepard for 4th place, with the Vulcan trying to defend for its life. As Waga darts ahead, a train begins to form up behind the second place Kingsley, and his place is certainly at stake. After a few laps in of the first season at the back, Jacob Reed calls it quits at turn 1, parking his car in the gravel. Back at the front, Kingsley defends second from Kraus, but after being held up by Richard Taylor, Kraus makes his move and takes second at turn 1 as Taylor goes off-road. Kingsley attempts to take back second place from the American, but at turn 3 he dives bomb the Vulcan and both of them spins off the track, giving the second to Shepard and third to Jukic. Kingsley attempts to come back, but didn't spot Kian White coming out into turn 3 and the cruise car hits the side of the VRT. Lap 7 sees the first round of stops for the leaders. As Waga comes in, Shepard will take the lead with Jukic and van den Hudden following close behind in second and third. The following lap sees Shepard and Jukic also come in, and as they come out, Waga was in mid-battle with Matthew Clip and used the Eidos car to his advantage to take the lead. Shepard falls in behind in third. Coming out in 5th after his pit stop, Jukic was having a stellar race until he lost it at turn 6. Luckily, he carried on. One guy who didn't was Maxime Crusette. After struggling through the majority of the race, he finally lost it at turn 1 and crashed into the barrier. Despite only missing a front wing from the collision, the French-Canadian eventually retired from the race. Meanwhile, the league reserve from the Drillers Academy, George Roach, was having a solid if not steady race as he holds on to his 8th place. Lap 18, the leaders come in for their final stop, Waga just cutting off Shepard at pit entry. And a few seconds behind on the same lap, Jukic also makes his final stop. Waga is the first to leave his box, but also at the same time Shepard was also released as they go side by side down the pit lane. until Emir Hamu's Eidos car proved to be the deciding factor as Wozniacki comes out first. But it didn't last for long, as out of nowhere comes Quattrocchi and the pair collide at the first corner as Wozniacki loses his grip on the top spot. Wozniacki soon caught up and the duel was on. Coming onto the pit straight, Shepard tried to prevent a DRS advantage, but Wozniacki was too quick coming out of the last corner, nearly putting him against the pit wall. Wozniacki's pace was just too much for Shepard, and the pole leads the race, much to the discontent of the Vulcan. Soon after, Shepard attempts to come back, but going into turn 3 he touched the driller's car and he slammed into the barrier. He was able to continue, but soon was under immense pressure from Jukic. It was only a few corners later when he finally succumbed to the Croatian's advances. After going wide at turn 9, the American driver finally claimed second from the Vulcan driver as the reigning world champion drops out of the race. Over the closing laps, Jukic closes the gap on Wozniacki, sparking rumours of a potential debut victory, just as Kraus tries to catch up to hold up honours for Vulcan. But before he had it all under control, on the penultimate lap, Wozniacki nearly lost it at turn 4 as he goes wide and hits the undercut. Jukic now catches up on him and is literally on the end of his tail, as the fans are now literally on the edge of their seats, as the Croatian looks for a potential debut victory. On to the final lap, and every move now is vital. Wozniacki prevents a DRS advantage, but Jukic is still on him, as he still closes up on the drillers. It was only at turn 3 when Jukic finally goes wide, and the rumours of him winning were put to sleep, as Wozniacki holds on to the top spot all the way to the finish line. After an unlucky pre-season, it finally paid off for Jan Wozniacki, as he becomes the first victor of the 2018 season, a well-deserved result indeed for drillers. Robert Jukic eventually takes second for American after being so close to take the win, and Kraus takes up the final spot on the podium for Vulcan Racing. Van den Hudden gets 4th for drillers in a brilliant result for the Dutch outfit. Ribley in a quiet race takes 5th for Force. Matthew Klipp takes 6th in a good race for Eidos. Toby Byrne after a bad start recovers well for 7th. Quattrocchi gets 8th after a shaky start. Vincent in another quiet race takes 9th, and George Roach takes the last point. With only 9 retirements, the first race of the season was on a high scale of attrition. The Drivers' Championship is a direct reflection of today's race. The top driver gets 25 points, with the rest of the top 10 scoring, with the only difference being Roach, whose points won't be calculated into the constructor standings due to being a league reserve. It is more complex in the constructor standings. Drillers lead after a brilliant result and have 37 points out of a possible 43. American have 18 points and second place thanks to Jukic's debut. The reigning champions Vulcan have some work to do after only getting 15 points and currently stand third. Force had a brilliant debut and got 4th. Eidos had a good race to get themselves 5th position, and ISR were the last team to get points and are 6th in the table. The next round is the Bahrain Grand Prix. You can watch that race live as it happens on the WRL YouTube channel on the 4th of March at 6 PM GMT. Subscribe to the WRL YouTube channel for more content like this. So sign up to the forums to get yourself involved, and don't forget to follow us on both Facebook and on Twitter. We hope you enjoyed today's highlights. I'm Ron Squire, and join us for the next round of the Formula Waga 2018 Championship.